In it here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna bid on here now. Who bid $500,000 bid?
Welcome to the Legacy of Agriculture. This program will explore the past, present, and future of agriculture. We'll look at the people, products, and events that have formed its history. And now, with today's guest, your host, Chris Bair.
Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture. We appreciate you joining us on this busy Saturday morning. We've got a great show planned out for today. And my guest on today is Bill Gross, the president and founder of Farm Rescue, that is based right out of just west of Fargo, North Dakota, and Horse, North Dakota. Bill, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Farm Rescue is an absolutely wonderful operation that was founded back around 2005, and you're a North Dakota farm boy. You were raised on the farm. Tell us a little bit about your background, Bill.
Well, yes, I was raised on a ranch slash farm in central North Dakota, just west of Jamestown, North Dakota. Cleveland is the name of the town, to be exact. Small town of about 120 population, and my folks' farm, multi-generational farm, and my great grandparents homesteaded there, and so long legacy of farming and ranching, and it was a quite sizable ranch. We had approximately 5,000 head of cattle, and we, of course, that's a full-time job taking care of that many. It was not a feedlot. We raised all those cattle and put up hay and planted crops and harvested and a busy time. Learned from a young age. As soon as I got done with school at 3:30, my dad was at the door and said to my mom, "Get him in coveralls, and he needs to get out and help feed the cattle or go haying or whatever it was." So like a lot of farm children, learn from a young age to work hard and contribute to the family and contribute to the legacy of the family farm.
The family farm is definitely a legacy for sure. Back in the 1800s, statistics show us that in the high 80 percentile was of the population in the United States was involved in production agriculture. Now it's less than 2% is what the USDA said. So this is hence the reason why legacy of agriculture is trying to preserve an amazing heritage, trying to preserve the legacy and preserve some of the stories that surround agriculture. And your story is very interesting because you didn't stay on the farm as a young man. You left the farm.
Well, that's true, Chris. And the reason requires a little bit of background story here. I was the youngest of five children, and small town America. There used to be farms every mile or two, of course, and then less and less family farms, right? And like you just mentioned, and less children. Uh, just harder for families to carry on that legacy, should we say. And the public school I went to there in Cleveland, there was only 120 students, K through 12. And as the farm families dwindled, like you mentioned, the percentage, so of course did the funding and the tax base for the public school. And eventually the public school closed down when I was a junior. And I finished my high school through correspondence and then went on to college. I wanted to continue farming and ranching, have a dear love for that way of life. My heart has always stayed in it. But my folks had troubles, financial troubles, like a lot of families did in the mid '80s. A lot of families lost their farms in the mid '80s, and we did not lose our farm, but lost a good portion of it, over half of it. and so my parents said, you need to go on to college and get a higher education, and you're always welcome to come back, of course, as a son if the farm is still here. And so I went on to take aviation training to be a pilot, and work my way up to be a Boeing 747 captain now for 30 years already. But my heart did not leave farming and or ranching, and hence there's a story behind farm rescue also, how that came about.
So, what was some of your favorite experiences as a young man, as a child growing up on the farm, adolescence into your teenage years?
Well, my favorite memories, should we say, are of working with the family, working with the cattle, the horses, the the agriculture part of it. You were truly working as a team. It's an excellent way to be brought up. I mean, it's good, hard work, clean living, and it teaches you a lot of things from a young age on work ethic and being respectful to people and the land, and to take care of one another. A real sense of community, and that, I would say, is my favorite memories of growing up, is that sense of community in that ranching community.
Is the community still there? The school that you was going to was dissolved. Is the school system still there at all, or?
No, this children went to the next sizable town that was about 20 miles away, to Jamestown, North Dakota, or else Medina, North Dakota, and hence when the school closed down, a lot of the other stores closed down. Right,
Yep.
the gas station. There's not even a gas station there anymore. The gas station, the grocery store. About the only thing that's there is some people living there, and uh, post office, and a grain elevator alongside the railroad tracks is still operating. So, it's sad. You see a lot of that throughout rural America and such. And, if you can't keep the legacy of farming going, and it's in the best interest to have the maximum number of family farms in operation, it supports the community, just like we're talking about here. And without that, all these smaller towns don't have the support they need to survive.
What was the toughest thing that you ever had to do on the farm? Your least favorite?
I would say, my least favorite would be going out late at night. We had a lot of cattle, and of course, sometimes even as a young child, I'd have to go out at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and being raised in North Dakota with the snowstorms and blizzards, and being all bundled up, and help if we had some problem with some cattle or such. So yeah, that probably would have been my least, the bitter cold, and the cattle still had to be fed even if it was a blizzard and such, right?
Yep. I lived in North Dakota for 5 years with my children, and when I moved to North Dakota, I found out what being tough in the cold is.
Yes.
It in North Dakota, those of our listeners that live south, you don't understand that when it's 30 below zero or 25 below zero, North Dakota doesn't shut down for cold. They
That's
keep
right.
going to school.
That's right. I remember some years with the wind chill, it was 100 below zero, and yeah, that's cold.
That's way cold. Hey, folks, we're coming down to the end of our first segment. I've got Bill Gross, the president of Farm Rescue, on as my guest today, and appreciate Bill for joining us. And coming down to the end of our first segment, I would like to give a huge shout out to Pifer Auction and Realty for sponsoring the legacy of agriculture. The good people at Pifers, for complete listing all of their 2024 land and equipment auctions. You want to go to pifers.com, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pifer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pifer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit pifers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pifers. Nobody does it better.
Folks, we're back in our second segment of the Legacy of Agriculture. I appreciate Bill Gross, president of Farm Rescue, that has joined us on this busy summer afternoon. It's hard to believe that summer is already here in 2024, but it's hot and humid today in down here in South Dakota anyway, Bill.
Yeah, that's correct. We're approaching the longest day of the year, right? So
Yep.
gotta enjoy it while we can.
That's exactly right. Well, we had a great first segment talking about your upbringing in rural actually central South Dakota. Jamestown isn't too far from the middle.
North Dakota in central.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Yep, North Dakota, and had a great upbringing on in ranching and farming, and your family kind of fell on hard times in the '80s, like a lot of farm families did, and at that time you graduated from high school, and then left the farm and became a pilot. So tell us a little bit about that transition, Bill.
Well, my parents, like I mentioned in the first segment, said to go on and get a higher education. They didn't know if the farm would be around for us children to carry on the legacy of ranching and agriculture. And so I went to, there just so happened to be a huge flight school in my own home state in Grand Forks, North Dakota. There's the University of North Dakota, and they have the Center for Aerospace Sciences. It's one of the largest aviation programs in the United States. So had an older brother that encouraged me to give it a try, even though no one in my family flew and airplanes or such. And matter of fact, as hardworking families, may be a bit surprising, but we never went on vacation as a young child. I never had been on an airplane in my life. And here I am, 18 years old. I mean, never traveled on a commercial airliner or a small one, just, working at home. And anyway, so I go enroll in at the Center for Aerospace Sciences and take my academics, of course, and also pilot training. And so that took 4 years there, and I worked very aggressively at that. And upon graduation, I was able to get a job with the old airline, isn't around anymore, Pan American World Airways, Pan Am. So tells a little bit about my age, but I got on there at a very young age. I was
You
yeah,
realize, Bill, that you just dated yourself.
I did.
You
That's
you
right.
just told the entire audience forever how old you are.
That's right.
Those of you that know who Pan Am is.
That's right. And so Pan Am was one of the pioneer airlines around the world, a very famous airline, and I was honored to work for him. Actually, I got hired when I was 22 years old, and but it took me far away from the farming community. I was offered a job, and I was based in Miami, Florida, and also flew out of their New York, their JFK hub, also. So my work was out of New York, JFK, and Miami Airport, and flew all over the Caribbean and South America and Central America, all those countries as a young man from age 22 to about 25 or such. They're far, far away from the farming and ranching. And I have to be honest, I never felt like I really fit in completely in those communities. It wasn't who I was, but that's but I liked the job of flying. And eventually Pan Am, they did go out of business. And fortunately, I was able to get a job with UPS, which virtually everyone knows UPS, the people who deliver packages to your house or business there. And a very good company, very financially stable, been around for over 100 years, and got a job as a pilot for them. And I've worked for them over 30 years as a Boeing 747 captain. It's the big 4-engine jet flying all over the world. And so it's been a wonderful career, flying mostly to Australia and all over Asia and Europe, virtually every country in the world over 30 years. And it all sounds great, but my heart never left the farming community. It really did. And I used to talk to my co-pilots and tell them, I have this idea when I retire. Now, this is when I was in my 30s, mid 30s age. I was telling them that I'm going to retire and and help these farm and ranch families that look like they're having a difficult time. I'm going to get this big John Deere tractor and show up at 6 in the morning, and the farmer will say, "Who's this?" The guy must have taken the wrong turn, and I would get out and say, "Put some fuel and seed in, and I'll plant a few hundred acres for you free." And the next day, go on to the next family, and it was basically my way of thinking of helping people. Is You could think of it as a mission, really. It's nothing different than a Christian mission, to go and help people. And my plan was to do it myself, and just do it single-handedly. Uh, and the more people I told about it, I told a chaplain friend of mine, and he said, "Bill, you shouldn't try to do it on your own. There's other like-minded people, and you have a noble cause. You know what you're doing with farming and ranching, and you should provide an avenue for people." So, I thought about that, and I was still single at the time, and I thought, well, I can do this. I used to go on mission trips overseas to Romania and Croatia through the church, but thought, there's people right here in America that need help.
That's an absolutely amazing story. So tell me a little bit about the growth of Farm Rescue. Your inception was 2005. Um, tell us a little bit about the growth.
Well, at first, farm rescue, I talked to people about it, and people were, they thought it was an interesting idea. They said, well, farm families, they always have helped one another. But what I saw that was different is that the demographics was changing, what we talked about, that there are fewer family farms and fewer children on each family, and it's just not as easy to help one another, and the farms are further apart. Yes, they've gotten bigger, they've gotten bigger equipment, but it's still a handful when there's a major injury, illness, or natural disaster. It's a time sensitive uh, crop. It has to be harvested and planted and such. So I just saw that the demographics were changing, and that there needed to be a formal organization. In the big cities, there's all kinds of nonprofits to rescue cats and dogs and everything else. But I thought, who's there to help the farm and ranch families? There ought to be something besides the neighbors having to step in. That there should be a formal organization, an avenue where people can help these farm families. Agribusiness is huge in the United States, and it's an important business to keep our country fed, of course. And so I felt there ought to be an avenue and a formal organization. So I started Farm Rescue as a nonprofit, and got a handful of volunteers the first year. Only had like 5 volunteers and one piece of equipment. It was a four-wheel drive tractor and a air seeder, and went around and we accepted applications of families that had an injury, illness, or natural disaster. That's what Farm Rescue does.
Sure.
And we plant or hay or harvest crops, and even livestock feeding also for farm families. But the first year was instrumental. The people were a little skeptical of thought, maybe, is there some catch to this nonprofit? Do I have to give them part of my crop, or are they charging something? And there's no catch to Farm Rescue. It's a free service, and we're just here to do good and help farm families that have had a unexpected crisis like that. So the first year went well. We helped, I think it was only 10 families the first year, but the farmers and ranchers loved it so much, and had a handful of sponsors. They were amazed at what we got accomplished, and the media was gracious to us. TV stations and radio and all came out and covered what this Farm Rescue was doing. And the next year we helped more families, and so on. And my idea was just to have it in North Dakota, my native state. That was my goal, to be quite honest. But everyone liked Farm Rescue so much that we got requests pretty soon from other states, from South Dakota, from Minnesota, both from farm and ranch
Sure.
families to to even businesses.
Hey, we're at the end of our second segment, folks. We're going to be right back with segment number 3.
Hey, this is Jasmine at Piper's Auction Realty and Land Management. Piper's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit pifers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pifers. Nobody does it better.
Folks, this is Chris Bair. This is segment number 3 of the Legacy of Agriculture. Bill Gross, president of Farm Rescue and the founder of Farm Rescue, is my guest on today's show. Bill, Farm Rescue is an amazing story that's built on, and I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's built on the love of agriculture and a deep respect for agriculture and the heritage and the legacy of agriculture. And I'm going to tell you a story, and you don't know this, but last fall I had the opportunity to do a farm auction for a widow in South Dakota, and she's actually been a guest of mine on this show. And Farm Rescue, her husband had come in from lunch, um, healthy, middle 40s, great farmer, very rural, very up to speed. And unfortunately, he had a heart attack at lunch. And because of their proximity, their homestead proximity from first responders and ambulances and all of those medical necessities in this type of a situation, he didn't make it. And she told the story. She told me the story when I went out to visit with her. She says, I want to keep farming. I have younger children. I have a plan that's completely put together. This is my plan. And she says, Farm Rescue was out to help me get through a really tough spot in the haying season. They helped me through it. And now she says, I'm finally able to breathe again. And she says, but this is my plan. She says, I need to sell a little bit of equipment. I need to sell a quarter of land. And she says, then I'm going to be debt free. And she says, if I'm debt free, I know that if with the help that I've gotten from Farm Rescue and the help that I've gotten from neighbors, I can offer my children a lifestyle on this farm. We'll never be rich, but I'm going to be able to raise my children in agriculture. And I wanted to share that with you as a thank you and as a very much as a success story for Farm Rescue.
Well, thank you, Chris. I did not know you were going to tell that story, and we have many of those stories. I am pleased to announce, though. I mean, that's what Farm Rescue is about. It's to continue the legacy of farming agriculture. That is what it's all about, and it is a love of that way of life and of the people that choose that way of life. And I'm glad they do. There's not a lot of people in America that maybe want to do that type of work, but I'm passionate about Farm Rescue, about our mission of helping people and helping agriculture. That really is the core of Farm Rescue. And matter of fact, we have over 1,000 of those such stories. I don't know if you were aware, but last summer we surpassed our 1,000 case, and I believe we're up to about 1,100 now farm families that we have assisted or rescued. And that's a wonderful thing. I always say that there's two parts to Farm Rescue. There's the tangible and there's the intangible. The tangible is what you see. We're a group of volunteers. We have 1,000 volunteers nationwide. We're kind of like Habitat for Farmers or the Red Cross for Farmers.
Yeah.
I want to be careful how I use those words. I'm just saying kind of that analogy. And the tangible side, we come in and we, like I said, well, when the chips are down and they've had a major injury, illness, natural disaster, we'll plant hay, harvest, the livestock feed, various things to help them through that crisis, so they don't have to take on more debt. Makes it harder for their children to continue. Maybe it allows their children to go to higher education, but can still come back and farm. It's just to help farming and those communities. And the tangible side is what you see of the equipment and the volunteers doing the physical work, the planting, haying, harvesting. The intangible side, of course, is helping continue that legacy and helping those small towns and the communities and those businesses that support those farmers. And in many respects, I am more proud of the intangible side. Of course, the people need immediate assistance, but the side of knowing that you're helping continue a legacy and those communities, I view that as a bigger challenge.
I just think it's so honorable to do that, and that one of the many reasons why I love agriculture, and I've spent my entire career, almost 33 years in the auction industry, and a lot of people ask me why I love the auction industry. The reason why I love the auction industry is it's allowed me to stay in agriculture. I also was raised on a farm. I had the opportunity to go back and farm with my dad, and it just didn't work. The logistics of it didn't work. However, I wanted to stay on the machinery side and on the land side of agriculture. And when you sit and you listen as an auctioneer, you listen to people's stories and what they've gone through in third, fourth, fifth generations. It's amazing. We just did a land auction in January, or in just a few months ago, Bill, where the deed, when we did the abstract, which is the history of the land, this family owned this land before South Dakota became a state.
That's
And
amazing.
so the abstract was quite short because it just spanned 4 or 5 generations of family members. And of course, again, so many people have left agriculture that the only solution to settling the estate was to have an auction and divide the land up, and it was sold to neighbors and investors and whatnot. But the reality of what's happening in that agriculture is there's getting to be less and less people in agriculture, and that's why we're here trying to help and to preserve. So we actually, you and I actually have some of the same goals when it comes to agriculture. But we're coming down to the end of our third segment, and Bill Gross, president of Farm Rescue, is here with us. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Pifer Auction and Realty. We're just getting through our spring auction run. Now we're into our summer months and looking forward to a great fall in 2024. So if you're looking for machinery, or you're looking for land, or looking to sell, you'll want to get a hold of the good people at Pifers. And that's just as simple as going to their website at pifers.com, or you can call us here at our South Dakota location at 605-836-2277. Nobody does it better.
Hey, this is Jasmine at Pifer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pifer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit pifers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pifers. Nobody does it better.
Hey folks, this is Chris Bair with the host. I am the host of the Legacy of Agriculture. Bill Gross, president of Farm Rescue, is joined me in this fourth and final segment. We've had a great conversation about Farm Rescue, that in 2005 he started it with a tractor and an air seeder, and now has over 1,000 volunteers. That's absolutely amazing, Bill. And I take my hat off to you for a job well done. And it's not your job. It's something that you invented or thought of in the seat of an airplane at 40,000 feet, and brought it back down to agriculture, and brought it back to your heritage of being raised on a very rural North Dakota farm. So I've got to ask you, as a farm boy at 18, 19 years old, you left the farm, you went to the University of North Dakota, which used to be the Fighting Sioux, by the way.
That's right.
um, and you didn't know anything about agriculture, but you had a brother that says, you got to think about flying. And so
Yeah,
tell
I
me,
didn't know anything about flying, but my brother said I should give it a try. Yes.
that's right.
Yeah, I did know about agriculture.
You
Yeah.
did know about agriculture, but tell me about, where was the hook in this deal? Was it the first flight? Was it the seeing an aviation show on television? What hooked you into aviation?
Yeah, it was really just the first flight. I went up there and took my first few lessons and just thought it was amazing. And part of it is maybe even uh, doing my flight lessons in North Dakota, right there, taking off from my very first flight in a Cessna 152 two-seater with an instructor, and flying over all the farmland, all the patches of the beautiful farmland of the crops, and you could see the wheat and the sunflowers and the corn, and I was just amazed. Again, I told you I never went on an airplane my whole life, up to 18, not even on a commercial airliner. So it was my first time with my feet off the ground, and I was just amazed at obviously the view you have, and flying, and it was challenging, and yeah, just loved everything about it.
So, having flown all over North Dakota, all over the Midwest, and all over the world, where is the best looking farm ground in the world?
I don't know if
How's
I
that
dare
for a
answer
loaded
that,
question?
but yeah, no, I still like the patches of farmland in the Midwest, all those farms and fields, and from 40, well, maybe not 40,000 feet, but a little lower where you can see them better. It's just so beautiful. And some people say, why would you want to live out there? There's no mountains to see and so on. But I'm okay with flat land, actually, and being able to see all those farms. And I always wondered, I wonder how that farm family is doing, and I wonder how the that rancher is doing, and just all good, hardworking people. But yeah, I still think in the Midwest is the most beautiful farmland.
Well, farm rescue, and I want to turn back to farm rescue because that's really what today's show is about. Tell us about some of this the hardest times that farm rescue has gone through, and tell us about some of the greatest experiences or events that has happened with farm rescue, Bill.
Well, I would say the hardest times, like any nonprofit, is just getting it up and running, and the funding it takes. I put in some of my own money, and then we have some sponsors and foundations that help. But it takes money to keep the lights on and the wheels turning on the equipment and such, and everything is fairly expensive nowadays. The repairs and all that. So the challenges have always been financial challenges for farm rescue, much no different than a farm family, actually. Getting the work done. We make sure that what we promise a farm family, that we do it, and we do it properly the way they would do it, and we do a good job. We take that very, very serious. Our reputation of helping people, and that they can trust farm rescue and depend on us. And it's a challenge to always keep the funding coming in so we can continue our mission to help more and more people. And we have conservatively expanded virtually every year. We added from North Dakota on to South Dakota, Minnesota, and Montana, and Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Illinois. We added Wisconsin now for this year. We operate in 9 states, and with a very small staff, only 8 employees, and not even one per state to speak of full-time employees. And we do all the work with volunteers. But yeah, the challenges have always been financially. And during COVID, I guess we had some challenges with getting volunteers into a different state, and making sure everything kept going. But those have been the main challenges.
So, as we're coming down, unfortunately, we're getting down to the end of our fourth segment, and I want you to tell us, Bill, um, how somebody can become a volunteer for farm rescue. Tell us how that works, and if somebody wants to become a volunteer.
Well, the simplest way to find out information about farm rescue, be it to volunteer, to donate, or to just check us out, is go to farmrescue.org. Farmrescue.org. There's a portal there to volunteer. You can even donate there. You can watch videos, actual testimonials from farm families that have been helped, from our sponsors, from volunteers. It's all good. It's a very comprehensive website and has a lot of um, captivating, a lot of sad and happy stories on there. I'd bring a box of Kleenex if you're going to watch many of those videos, but we've done a lot of good, and I'm proud of all the good that we've done to help people and the legacy of agriculture.
So they simply go to farmrescue.org, and that's FARMRESCUE.org. Is there a telephone number? Is there a toll-free number that they could
Yeah,
call if they
there's a
don't?
telephone number you can call. It's on our website also, but it's 701-252-2017. That's 701-252-2017. And yeah, I might add, you can apply for assistance there also, of course. I mean, if you're a farm family, or of a farm or ranch family that needs help, give us a call. You can do it anonymously. Sometimes these farm families they're very prideful, independent people. God bless them, and they hesitate to apply for assistance. They always think that, oh, there's someone else that needs the help more than them. No, that's not necessarily true. You just call and talk to us on what the situation is, or apply online, and we'll see if we can help. And the majority of cases we do approve. And if you're a neighbor that knows, or a business that knows of some farm family in a bad way, well, you call us and nominate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill, again, we're coming down to the end of our fourth segment, but I've got kind of something that's exciting for our listeners that listen through legacyofagriculture.com, Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube. Is as we have bonus segments, and unfortunately, we have time constraints when it comes to our radio station, and so we're going to finish off our fourth segment, and then Bill and I are going to continue in a bonus route. So if you want to listen and continue to listen to the end of our conversation about farm rescue, you'll definitely want to go to our website, to our archive tab, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. A shout out and a thank you to Pifer Auction Realty for sponsoring the Legacy of Agriculture. And we'll be right back with our bonus round.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pifer's Auction Realty and Land Management. Pifer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pifers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pifers. Nobody does it better.
Folks, hey, this is Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture, and we're in an additional round here. Bill Gross, the president of Farm Rescue. There's one thing that I've learned on the Legacy of Agriculture, and we're pretty close to our 50th episode of the Legacy of Agriculture. And the one thing that I find out about people's stories is there's always more to the story than what we could tell in 40 or 45 minutes, right, Bill? We all like to
That's
tell.
right.
And so as we finish up, Bill, would you mind just sharing one big success story that you have had with Farm Rescue? Just an example.
Yeah, I certainly can. So again, what Farm Rescue does is we're a nonprofit organization that comes in and plants, hays, harvests, or livestock feeding for farm or ranch families that have had a major injury, illness, or natural disaster. And we've assisted over 1,000 farm families already, and there's no catch to it. It's a free service. Just we're on a mission to do good and help farm and ranch families to continue their legacy. And I can think of many stories, of course, but one such story is a family. It was near Hague, North Dakota, and they have 5 children. And two of their children came down. They had two sets of twins, and
Wow.
one child from each set of twins came down with Friedreich's ataxia, and that is basically a muscle degenerative disease where there is no cure. And Nathan, their son, older son, who came down with it first, had to have rods put in his back, had to have surgery at the Mayo Clinic, and in Rochester, Minnesota, and it was just during harvest time. And like all families, they're a small farm, no hired help or such, and all the other children were younger, and they wanted to be with their uh, son, of course, their child, for the surgery at the Mayo Clinic. And so they contacted us and asked if we could help with harvest time. Harvest was just upon them when the surgery was available at the Mayo Clinic. And so, of course, we approved them, and our volunteers came in and harvested their crop completely, and they went to attend to their child at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester there. And that's the correct priority, but yet they have to continue keep their farm going for the family and rest of the children. So Farm Rescue did that, and we gladly do that for farm families. And it was a few years later, I think about 3 or 4 years later, their younger daughter, they were informed, had the same disease. They didn't know that until then, had the same disease. And so she had to have some procedures done also, and we came in and we planted for them a few years later to help the family out again. And so again, so the parents could be with their children, which they should be, and support and so on, and help continue that family farm. That family farm did continue. It's still operating to this day. And so that's just one uh, story, but we have hundreds of similar type stories. That's what we do, is help farm and ranch families when they have a um, devastating thing happen. And I mentioned before that people should apply. Just call or contact us on our website at farmrescue.org. I can mention one other one just to give you an example. A uh, neighbor called us one time and said that this farmer got his arm cut off in a combine accident, and his hand basically. And um, and so we contacted that farmer, and it was during harvest time, of course. And he said, I'm sure there's other people that need help more than me. So just amazed at the farm families. Here's a gentleman who lost his hand in a combine, and he's thinking there's other people that need help worse than him. So God bless them. But we went and we harvested for that family also. And again, hundreds and hundreds of stories, everything from farm families that have had accidents like that, where they've lost limbs, or heart attacks, or cancer treatments, or their children are ill, like we said, even young little children getting treatment for cancer, ones that are only like 4 or 5 years old children. Um, and and accidents with vehicles and equipment, or falling off, broken legs, broken arms, broken necks, people burned up in
Sure.
some fires and stuff. We helped a family north of, I'm telling you more than one story, but north of Bismarck, you mentioned, up by the Price brothers. It wasn't them, but the up by Washburn and Wilton area, a farmer who was harvesting, and a hydraulic line broke in his combine, and
Mhm.
sprayed hydraulic fluid on him, actually, even in the cab. And the it just so happens that the combine also started on fire. It was a dry wheat harvest, and he had to get out of the combine, but run through the fire on the ground, and that ignited him. And luckily, there was another person in a combine nearby, got out and got the fire out the best they could from him and threw him in a vehicle and started driving to Bismarck, North Dakota. And I get a little choked up even talking about this. His name was Wes Stepke. I don't think he'd mind telling. He was, they met him on the highway with a helicopter and took him there, and then took him to Minneapolis. And then he was in a coma. They put him in a coma. And I went to see him there and such. But anyway, we helped harvest the rest of his crop, and while he was in a coma and a bad burn victim, and he's back and recovered and still farming to this day. So there's just I could talk for hours, like we said, Chris. Many stories.
Well, I can say this: God bless you and your efforts. This is absolutely what agriculture is about. We saw it growing up. I saw it growing up on the farm. There's one thing about agriculture: when the chips are down and somebody really needs help, that is one thing about agriculture. You have a farmer who's in an accident or where there's been a loss of life, the neighbors just show up and people help, and they might not be able to help with harvesting or putting a crop in the ground or taking the hay off, but they'll help with meals. They'll bring meals in for weeks on end to a family, and that's the beauty of agriculture. It's just a wonderful lifestyle. It's tough, it's hard, but it makes for big hearts.
That's right.
It makes for big hearts. Well, Bill, I know that you've got to get running, and we're going to close the show out here at the Legacy of Agriculture in our additional round. Thank you very much for joining me. Hang on just for a minute. I want to visit with you after the show.
Thank you very much, Chris.
In here now, I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna bid on here now. Who bid $500,000 bid?
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Legacy of Agriculture with Chris Bair, sponsored by Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Call Pfeiffer's at 605-836-2277.